So fun today because we are in this great book. I actually sent a picture of my workspace to someone today, and they said that's awesome, and they zoomed in on this, like what's going on, because they didn't know about what we do with mindset every day, how we're doing it based on content and cranking through a lot of great content. And so once you hear that, he's okay. How do I get my people involved? So optimistic we can make more happen. That being said, chapter 2, we're just getting into it. We talked a lot about the basics. What are you afraid of and why? And now we're into, can you make it go away? And these 5 laws, if you will, around fear. She calls them truths. So again, I got lots highlighted as always. I love talking. That's why I'm a coach. And yet at the same time, I love listening even more, which is a big coaching thing. So what do you guys have out of this wonderful chapter and feel the fear and do it anyway?
Well, go ahead.
I'm going to let Kara go, then Alessandra. Thanks for both speaking up. What do you got, Kara?
The first truth, the fear will never go away as long as I continue to grow. It made me realize if I'm not feeling some healthy fear there, maybe I'm not growing. I need to push myself more.
Big aha on that, right? Like, man, if I'm actually not feeling fear, that means I'm not pushing myself. I'm not growing. I'm playing status quo, which, by the way, we all know is actually dying. There is no such thing as status quo. You're either growing or you're dying. It's just this: most people don't see the dying happening until it's too late. In the business, they keep, quote, status quo, doing the same thing over and over, maybe at a high level, and it turns into burnout and they collapse. Or maybe they're not playing any of their bookkeeping, keeping track of their numbers like they should be, and just kind of going along without paying attention to it until all of a sudden April 15th comes around and they realize just how big a hole they dug. So we all get to grow and get better, and we know that we're doing that when we're uncomfortable and there's fears showing up. Thanks, Kara. All right, Alessandra, you were next.
Yeah, kind of like the same that she was saying. Just what stuck out to me is like we can't escape fear, and the only way to get rid of the fear is to doing something. The fear of doing something is to go out and do it. But again, once you do that, you're gonna have a new challenge, and then you're gonna have fear again. And it's very interesting, and it really, I guess, it is my mind to know that I don't have to get rid of fear. That's not the issue. The issue is to feel it and do it anyway, basically.
Yeah.
So it's just like, an aha moment for me as well. It's like, you don't have to get rid of the fear. That's not the point.
Excellent. Yes. And it isn't the point. They're going to be there. They're going to exist. The actual point at this first truth is creating more. Mm-hmm. Lean into things that are uncomfortable. Lean into things that you might have a little fear, scare, anxiety, and get into the activities. And then that's another one later, because you brushed on it, Alessandra, and yet I want someone else to take a deep dive. One of these other truths, in fact, 2 of them, around activity.
Dorothy is happy to do that.
Awesome. Dorothy, what do you got?
I'm so excited about this book. And another thing I'm excited is that this time I read the right book on the right day. Yay. Because I have a lifetime of doing that, and I have felt so uncomfortable learning all this real estate stuff. But I come from a family of teachers, and we never were aware of not having money, but we didn't. We just learned to create it without the money. And I will never forget my first day teaching. I was a teaching assistant in the same school where I had just gotten a BA. And I always made in languages and English, I always made A's, but I flunked economics. And I would always slink into the back of the room and slide down in the back row. And all of a sudden I had to stand in front of the room and teach the class. I thought I would die. I held up the book. This is the book. You buy it at the bookstore. And I got the class registered, everybody that signed in that they were there. I went into the teacher's lounge and sat down on a chair and cried and cried and cried. I can't do this. It's too hard. And one of the other TAs said, what's wrong? And she said, we all felt like that the first time. Just go back and do it again. So I was the world's worst teacher that semester. And then I learned to do it. And I finally ended up with an evaluation from Porter Sargent, which is a tough evaluator, that said I had extraordinary talent and was very gifted and the class was excited and alive and couldn't wait to learn more. And I went, that was a breakthrough. So that's why I'm not quitting in this real estate gig. I know I look SHITTY. Tough.
Well, here's the fun part for me, because you mentioned something, this third party evaluator, using the exact words you put in here, you're gifted. Well, the reality it's time on task over time.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden magically looks like, oh, you've got this gift. Oh, you're so special. You're unique. I could never be like that, is what other people observing it are saying. And the reality is it's just time on task over time.
Yeah.
By the way, that same thing, taking action. Truth number 2. The only way to get rid of fear of doing something is to go out and do it. I think of this in terms of the whole initial conversation lead generation tool. We all should be having conversations, lots of conversations all day, every day, in every situation, no matter what. We should be making a point to connect with people. Think of real estate and real estate transactions like a pinball machine with 40 balls bouncing around, because that's really what's happening. And your job is just to step in front of one. The real estate transaction is going to happen. A buyer is going to buy and a seller is going to sell. The question is, are you the one stepping in the middle of that to all of a sudden be the one helping one side or the other? Okay, so this conversation piece, many agents are scared of this conversation piece because of all their history, all their training. Don't talk to strangers, stay in your lane, be careful. All the stuff we've gotten since day one, early on in our life, is now stuck in that subconscious. And the only way to break it down, truth 2, the only way to get rid of the fear is doing something is to go out and do it. Client, what do you got?
I don't know if you guys covered this already or if I'm in the right spot, but when the author talked about their mom or whatever always told them to be careful, that really hit me, because in my world, you always say that to kids, be careful, but what are you actually saying to them? And so, my wife is going to think I'm crazy, but I'm going to tell my kids, you know what? Take some risks today. I know I'm going to get flack, and because she's not going to understand it, but I'm actually literally going to start telling my kids, take risks.
Yeah.
Because it's the only way you grow. But we hear all that, be careful, be careful, be careful. Bah, humbug. Let's take risks. Life is short.
Well, here's the reality, and going back to that, and I'm totally appreciative of all of you pulling stuff that we've already covered from a previous chapter and bringing it forward. That's great that you're doing that here in this space. So that's chapter 1, and here's the key on it. The person saying be careful, if you break down following different levels of fear, they're not really saying be careful because you need to protect you. They're saying be careful because I don't believe I can handle life if something happened to you. It's their fear that they're projecting on the other person. That's why you're telling them to be careful. You and I both know if you were really focused on their gain, on their growth, on them becoming an amazing human being, you would be telling them, take some risk. Talk to people you normally wouldn't talk to. Build relationships versus this whole don't talk to strangers, stay in your bubble, get small. And now you're hiding behind social media, really not connecting with people, and you're miserable and depressed and lonely because of all these other people's fears that have been surrounding you up to this point. What else? Evelyn, was that your hand?
It was. This is just a real shorty. I was talking to my daughter. She works at the Royals, and she was getting ready to come home. And in my mouth came, be careful. Never mind. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I just sipped it.
So she's working for the Dallas Royals?
No, the Kansas City Royals.
Well, I heard since that funding failed at the ballot that there might be some relocations in the future.
I hope not.
I love my sports teams. I track a lot of them. What else you guys have from the content?
Am I on?
You are, Justin. What do you got?
So I have something from the content I'll circle back to, but I want to touch on this, what we just brought up about being careful, or not saying be careful, or as Robert said, telling the kids to take some risks today. The caution I would throw at this is the level of emotion that goes into the parent or the person protecting the other person affects the way that be careful comes out. Like, so what I would tell my kids, have fun and be safe. But I had a competitive motorcycle racer, and the other one was for a while, and then got into skateboarding, and they both come home mangled. We've, with both of them, been to the hospital. And the reason I tell you that, so from their mother, be careful came across as, oh my God, don't hurt yourself again. From my parents, the grandparents, be careful came out as, you're going to hurt yourself, or don't kill yourself. So there's a level of it, but I think the emotion that the person giving the advice feels tends to change, how that advice comes across. So that's just an observation.
How about we also, Justin, change the words though? Because be careful has a whole story with it and a history with it. What you really, I think, we're saying to your boys, and I would say this as well, be attentive, be present.
Yeah, I said be safe. That was, have fun and be safe. I would leave them with that every time.
Be safe motorcycle racing is to park the bike. Right?
And we knew that wasn't going to happen.
Amen. So now we just get to be, how about be better? How about be out front? It's a lot safer out there, right?
Yeah, that is true.
Lots of places we could go in this conversation to help people understand for you, because you're leaders, you're coaches, and of your kids, of the agents around you. So we want them actually to take risk. And like we are maybe saying this moment, be attentive in the conversation, be a good listener, be present, play the game rather than worrying about the outcome. So many times in our space of conversations, we're so worried about getting the appointment or getting the commission check that's really our fear, that we won't have a good conversation. Instead, if you gamify it and play the conversation game as a learning lesson, magically all of a sudden business starts showing up. Now, I saw somebody else ready to go. Who was
it? Hello.
Justin, number 2. I'll take it. What do you got?
So the other thing from the material that I really liked was the rule or law number 5. And I think, how did it go? I'm paraphrasing because I'm sitting in my truck. But it was something to the effect of, feeling the fear is more frightening than facing the fear, pushing through it. It was to that effect. But
Can I read it
and
for
I
you?
think it
Can I
ties
read it
back
for
to
you
it
before
too.
you go on?
Yeah.
Pushing through fear is less frightening than living with the underlying fear that comes from a feeling of helplessness.
So you had brought up rule number 2, which the only way to get through fear is to do it. And I think this is just like a call to action, sense of urgency, a do it now. And I really buy into that. I think the longer that you sit in those fears, the bigger they get. And the more paralysis that in my life anyway, I've felt by holding that fear.
Yeah, especially if you internalize it and you keep it up. Just think about this when you or anybody else you know were little kids and you were scared of the monster under the bed or the monster in the closet. How big, ugly, scary was that quote monster that didn't even exist? Yet in our own heads, we've created a big, scary, ugly situation. By the way, the flip side of this to help motivate someone, and we use this in coaching all the time, is to ask questions and allow people to create their own big, hairy monster. Think about this in a real estate transaction a moment. You're bidding, you're in a multiple offer situation, right, Alessandra? And your clients don't want to go any higher, and you know higher is required to get the house. What would it be like to not have a place to move your family? What would it be like not to get that kitchen of their dreams? Whatever they're really excited or motivated, bringing them back to motivation. What would it be like if this didn't happen? You could tell them all day long what the ramifications are, yet if you ask the question, they create a bigger monster in their own head, even if they don't articulate it. Because just like all of us, they've spent their entire life being programmed for the negative. And most of them have not been in this room learning to think differently the last 3 years, the last year, the last 6 months, or even the last week. You're all growing and getting away from that. Still recognize that most of the people you're interacting with haven't. And so the flip side of these you can absolutely use to get them thinking differently. What else are you guys pulling out? Evelyn, I see your hand again. You go.
I'm gonna refer back to the other books. My Raz. On Channel 29, she was talking about her friend's husband that had the stroke and everything. So I wrote beside it Raz. She was always afraid she couldn't do this or afraid, if anything happened to him. And I can actually put myself there because I have a horrible, and I just kind of felt the other day, it was my Raz is my problem. I was on the phone for 20 years talking to people, customers, in my early career. And when I left, I said, I'm never going to get on the phone again. And I've kind of been a really bad person because I avoid it like the plague. So my new thought is I can and I will, and I will get better.
Amen. And let's go to this story because it was such a good one. Janice, that was her name.
Yes.
She had planned her whole life to have other people, her husband, taking care of her. That had been her whole life. And all of a sudden, he has a stroke and she now has to roll into the lead. I love this quote. Life is what happens when we've made other plans. All of a sudden, she's thrown into life. And the transition wasn't easy. She was asking, why did this happen to me? What happened? That being said, she discovered a profound sense of peace she had never experienced before after she took action because she had to. She started to realize the heavy price of what she'd paid by not taking lead. And she now knows the answers to all of her what ifs are I'll handle it. Think about it right now. You know intuitively that if something serious happened, you'd wind up in the move of I'll handle it. I know for a fact if something happened to me, Marcy, she'd go right into, I'll handle it. She doesn't want to right now. She might even have fear of taking care of all the stuff I take care of. And at the same time, we know intuitively we'll handle it. So rather than allowing the fear to exist, why don't we just move that intuition from, we know it's going to happen if it does happen, to, we're going to do it anyway and take the action right now. Yeah, Clint,
So,
what do you got?
just want to say one thing. So, the powerful thing that I think about this for me is the aspect of doing it anyway puts me in control. When you don't do it because fear is taking over, you're allowing something else to control you. And in my world, if I'm going to crash and burn, I might as well be steering the car.
Yeah.
I might as well be steering the car. But if I'm steering the car and I don't crash and burn, then guess what happened? I made it through and I did that. So I think the power in this actually is allowing yourself to literally control your own destiny. For me, that's where the power falls in. I control what happens. I can do that. And I'm not giving away my power, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, you're actually taking your power. And by the way, you're also taking the power to get in this upward spiral. I always talk about quantity versus quality. Take action, do stuff. Because by knowing you should be doing it and not doing it, now you start judging yourself. I know I should be doing it and I'm not doing it. Now I don't feel as good about it myself. And you stay in this downward spiral. Once you take action to push back on these fears and start doing it, all of a sudden you get a success. You start feeling better about yourself. Feeling better shows up. Quality of conversations get better. All of a sudden you're having more success. You're feeling better. In fact, truth number 3, the only way to feel better about myself is to go out and do it. Not only is going out and doing it eliminating the fear, going out and doing it is building the self-esteem simultaneously. And as she says on the bottom of page 21, which I know all of you fall in this category, I know on some deep level there is nothing to fear.
Mhm.
It's the surface level that needs the convincing. We all know deeply that, gosh darn it, there's nothing. We got this. And yet we have all this surface level story that we've been allowing to lead. And it's time to break it. What else you guys have from the content?
So
Yeah, Judy.
I've been thinking about this for a while, since yesterday. I bet everybody on here has had some experience that was awful or you were afraid it would happen. And we didn't instantaneously combust. We're here on the call. We're living life. Everything's fine, right? Like you get so afraid of something happening. But if the worst thing happened, you would deal with it. You would handle it, right?
Yeah.
So just thinking about it, it's kind of like taking the plunge in a cold pool. You don't want to do it, but you jump in and the shock is there initially. But in a few minutes, the water feels fine and you acclimate to the situation. So same idea as what Russ was talking about. You just get better and better.
And I love
Yep.
I love your language there, Judy, of acclimate to the situation.
Yep.
That's really what happens. You push against the fear and you stay in that zone doing the work, and all of a sudden you acclimate and the fear goes away.
Yep.
And then there's a new place to grow. And you push there and you bounce up against it, and you've got that fear, yet you stay in it and keep doing it,
Mm-hmm.
and you acclimate. Great visual on that. Thanks, Judy. What else? Who else?
I also like to touch on number 4. Not
Yes,
only,
Alessandra, thank
yeah, not only am I going to experience fear whenever I am on unfamiliar territory, but so is everyone else. So I guess we compare ourselves too much to other people. And something that we talked about a minute ago was that we think the other people is just gifted and they do everything perfect. And we don't know that they actually felt fear when they started, and now we see these public speakers and these great agents, and you think they just have something that I don't have. That's why they can do that. But reading these, I'm thinking that's not the case. They just went through the process and they overcame their fear, and but they did have it at one point. So they, they're just like us. That it's not that they're better than us. They might have different things, but they're not necessarily better. They just pushed through it and they got there. So the knowing that everybody else feels just the same way we do, it's kind of, a little bit of comfort in that. There is comfort in that.
And here's another big piece I want to pull out of what you just said for everybody, because usually when we're looking at this better, we're doing it as a comparative analysis. Mm-hmm. I'm better than they are. I'm not as good as they are.
Yep.
Here's where I want you to be doing this, because I know you are. I'm better today than I was a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. Just being in this room, you're all getting better. And start looking instead at how you compare to where you are. And then we have one more break, because I already know one special person in this room. She's going to see she was better a week ago, and then she's going to show, but not as much better as I want. Not as much better as I should be. No, you're getting better. And it's like a hockey stick. That's the fun part with this. All of a sudden, as you keep working and getting better, magically, you're going to be gifted. It's going to be amazing. So stay on course. So guys, it is Friday. Happy Friday to all of you. There is, for those that want to do it, I won't be there. Conversation time 2 to 5. I'd love you guys to show up, make that happen. Most importantly, I would love for you to make it Freedom Friday for all of you. Support each other and having conversations to build an organization, to find leverage for yourself, to get free. That's what 2 to 5 Friday has always been. And I know many of you, I have a day full of appointments that you guys have put on my calendar. So I can't wait to see you at the different places that you have got me, and to help you get whatever dreams are happening in those moments. So love y'all. See you Monday, chapter 3, unless I've got you scheduled today. Bye.
Bye.